Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fargo Parking Commission meeting. Today's agenda, we don't really have any action items, but we'd like to meet regularly so we can keep abreast of all the things, exciting things that are going on in downtown Fargo. So we won't have a quorum, so we will wait till the end of the meeting and probably have to pass the minutes and the agenda at our next meeting unless somebody happens to show up. But let's introduce ourselves first. Deb?
Debbie Ansrud, Planning Department.
Jim Gilmore, City of Fargo.
Mike Williams, Risk Manager.
Randy Thorson, downtown business owner.
Thanks, everybody. So Vanessa, we'll put you up first with the parking report, if that's okay.
Sure. Good
And
morning.
Identify yourself as Parking Management System.
Yep, Vanessa Hernandez with Interstate Parking.
Thanks.
So revenue for May and June was relatively the same. Most of our lots are at capacity with wait list, other than Main Avenue lot and Island Park ramp. ROCO transient revenue for May was $16,661. In June, we saw a little bit of a dip of $14,038, which is kind of consistent with what we saw last year. But for the year so far, we've got $86,338 in transient revenue for ROCO, whereas last year we only saw $26,935 for this time. So that's a plus. And that's pretty much all I have for you on the financials.
Sure. I just drove through the Island Park ramp because at our last meeting, we were talking about how we can utilize that more. And boy, we have opportunities there.
We sure do.
Right,
Plenty
so,
of room in there.
Yes, so I did see that you maybe changed or added some signage or
Right
as
now-
far as about it being public parking on the outside, that sign has always been there, but I think it's helpful if we can maybe work to identify, we've talked at our last meeting with some of the business owners around there, Aaron in particular, and we talked about maybe creating some table tents that we could maybe distribute with the DCP to local businesses, especially on that end of town. And do we have free 2-hour parking there right now?
Maybe I can address that. It's one of the other items on the agenda, and we're putting these pay stations into the Island Park ramp. There would be one at each of the stair towers at the entrance so people could pay hourly. Right now, it's not really designed for hourly parking. As far as the rates, I told them to use the same thing at ROCO with the first 2 hour free, but I haven't consulted with the parking commission yet. And so at some point, we'll want you to concur with those rates, but be interested in your thoughts if you're comfortable with that. First 2 hours free, and then when you get beyond 2 hours, then it's $3, and then it goes up to.
Right, so we've found that it really works well to have 2 hours free, as good evidence with the financial report that we did 86,000 with the transient parking. And I think part of it is it makes it comfortable for people to try, and then once they try it, they like it. So we've learned something that could work. Randy, do you have something?
I think that it was just a trial thing that we did, but with tremendous success with it. So I think you do the same thing there, give it a try.
Sure.
And just introduce it to people.
So,
Do you know if, have those machines been installed yet?
Nope, they will be installed. I'm working with MEI hopefully next week.
So once those are installed, yeah, we can encourage people to use that for hourly parking, particularly if you're going to be downtown all day.
right. And I do want to compliment you. The ramp is really clean. So thanks a lot. It looked like it had just been sprayed down. So is there anything else on your financial report, Vanessa?
No, there isn't.
Okay. And then the next item is the parking lot, lot maintenance. Is there any in particular issues on that, Jim or Vanessa? Do we have some dollars that we're going? What's the regular maintenance that's being done this year on our lots?
Maybe I'll have Vanessa address that.
So we've had the ramps power washed except the ROCO. We're waiting for all the construction to finish there before we do that. We had, and I don't have a total for you as far as dollars. We've had the northeast stairwell power washed, and that was actually done the Sunday after marathon. Other things we're working on is at the Civic, we're going to be putting in some new lights with that photo eye to make it a little more efficient. The sweeping of the lots started last Monday, and the crack filling and striping will hopefully start next week.
So then when, for on-street, that's more engineering and Jeremy's deal as far as the striping goes, because we have had some good comments about how we maybe need to make some improvements on our handicap parking striping on-street. And I'm not sure have you, Vanessa, in the structures, we're doing fine for the accessibility on the handicap, is that right?
That is correct.
Right, so it's our on-street stuff that we're talking about.
And
Yep.
I think we need to add a handicap spot to, it's either the 4th or 3rd Street lot. That will be addressed when they go through.
Okay, well, thanks, Vanessa.
The other maintenance item, or there's sort of a final item that needs to be done at Roco. There's some sealant it was a little too slippery, and they're adding some grit to that. So I believe the weekend of August 9th that facility will be closed for a couple days while we put that down. However, Block 9 will be open by then, and so we'll be able to, I think, move people over there for the weekend.
Right. Okay, anything else, Vanessa, from interstate parking?
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the financial report of the parking funds. Jim?
Yeah, I don't have anything to report. I don't know, Mark, did you put anything together for this, or?
Right. So I know that you've been working on financing for the mercantile. Is that down the line? You want to talk about that later on?
I think we can probably talk about that when we get into
Sure.
5C, some of the parking rates for
Okay.
2020.
That sounds good. So the next item is the update on downtown projects with the Block 9 opening. Keith gonna do that, or Jim?
Okay, maybe Keith can invite Keith up, but kind of give us a report on how Block 9's opening. Like, keep in mind, I think we broke ground on this in September, and so we're in July right now.
Thanks, Keith. Do you want
Yeah,
to
thank you for
identify
having me.
yourself?
So as Jim mentioned, or just previously or alluded to, we are getting very close to that facility being ready to use. So we have final punch lists and things like that happening right now. We're targeting a CO of that next week. So our goal is to have sort of a soft opening August 1. But we've been communicating with US Bank and other people that are using it August 15th. That facility is fully online and ready to be used.
Right. So actually, some of the later conversation, we're just looking at what are our options for parking. One of the issues is, like the Fargo Theaters always had for a long, long time, during the daytime hours, we're always looking for opportunities for parking, and the city doesn't manage or own this ramp. But do you have any kind of a understanding or maybe some ideas about how this is going to be used as far as for public use?
Yeah, so in the interim, so we have about a year between when this ramp will open before, or we're expecting about a year before the main building really becomes occupied by RDO. So during that time, RDO is managing all the leasing and everything associated with that. There are some leases that are assigned to that ramp for that interim period or that interim year, but we do feel like there will be available public stock during that first year for sure. That's just general hourly parking. So we're modeling it, the rates after the same as the Roco, so a couple hours free at the beginning. And then nights and weekends are always free for the life of that ramp.
Our agreement is that I think after 6 o'clock on this one, it has to be free until, I don't know, 5 or 6 in the morning and on weekends. However, Rusty had indicated to me that they would be charging immediately, that there would not be a first hour or two free, so.
Okay, they made that change then. Okay.
So, and just for people's information, so who's operating and managing this ramp? It isn't Interstate Parking.
Correct, yeah, so RDO, their building maintenance and kind of IT department, they have some facilities management groups, they're going to manage it.
So, we have some staff from Fargo Theater here, and they're gonna, share some of the ideas and concerns that they have. But, we do have the ROCO, which is open, for the first 2 hours free, that usually there's places available. You might have to go towards the top floor. But that's an option. One of the other options is you'd mentioned changing the 90 minutes on Broadway to 2 hours. And again, we'll get into this later, but I'm just wondering, Keith, maybe you can help introduce these folks to the Offutt folks. And maybe there's something that, like Jim said, over this next year, until all the businesses are up and running on that site, maybe there's something that Fargo and RDO can work out with some kind of an agreement as far as that daytime parking. Just basically just asking to make an introduction.
Yeah, absolutely, we can connect you with the people that are handling that structure, that leasing structure and everything associated with that.
Wonderful.
There's going to be 379 spots in the Block 9 ramp. I think it might be a little higher now with the drive-through taken out, but a lot of those spots will be used for contractors, construction workers, so that should take a little pressure off the street as far as they'll be able to simply park in the ramp. I think the actual top floor is being used a bit as a staging area. They're lifting stuff off the parking garage onto the tower.
Sure.
And so that, but there still is that requirement that once they're open, that at least 200 spaces are available nights and weekends for the public.
That sounds good. And then our next item is to talk about Mercantile. So Keith, are you gonna you're working on that project too, I know, but you're available.
Yes, I am,
Yeah.
yep.
So, anything on Block 9 opening other than what we've talked about from anybody? Otherwise, we'll go to the Mercantile design timeline. And Keith?
Yeah, so current progress right now, we are working on getting our final, I guess, our costs together with our contractors. We have proposals and bids due at the end of this week, so we're hoping that we're wrapping up kind of all our checks and balances and vetting out the costs next week, so, able to be ready to present that cost or for review, I guess, with Jim and then the other people involved in the ramp. So that would be, we're wrapped up our 100% DD set. We have about 2 months worth of kind of cleaning up design, maybe 6 weeks to 8 weeks, I guess I would say. But ultimately, we are tracking very well right now to bring an early foundations package or an early permitting package into the inspections group, ready for a late September or 1st of October start with on the design and construction side. So from the planning side with the city, we're working through the developers agreements. We're getting ready from alley vacations and some right-of-way vacation stuff. There's some other things working through the planning commission, or excuse me, through the planning department right now. And those also seem to be timing out that late September, early October. So we're feeling confident, or more and more confident every day, that an October start for that project is realistic.
So it's good, and that's why I think it's good to have these meetings regularly, is to get that information. But one of the things that I guess I haven't seen lately what some of the designs are, but over the course of time, we've often, we try to make our buildings future ready. So what do you think the life expectancy for this building is, this new Mercantile? How long do you think it'll be functional?
Yeah, so parking ramps are very dependent on maintenance, but assuming, general maintenance is upheld and maintained, a 50-year ramp there is not unlikely for a structure like that. It could be longer than that as well. Yeah. Well,
So how many years?
50? I mean, 50.
I hope it's a lot more than that.
It could, yeah, right. I mean, it could be a 100-year ramp. Just make sure the maintenance is taken
Yeah,
care of.
so in that, and Jim, we talked about it some. I know Carl Walker has some good experience with, adding some future-ready items. Some of the things, when we think about if we were to do Roberts over again, we might have sunk some anchors in that top floor that could accept the solar array that we're talking about now. You see this happening around the country. And so I did visit with Mike Almendinger and Bruce Scrub about this. And maybe we could add like an add alternate for some of those items, you know, like, okay, it's going to be a precast item. What would it cost as an add alternate for sinking some anchors in, so that if we were to, in the future, use solar arrays, that we could bolt them in, you know, without, you know, having to drill into the structure. And, you know,
Yeah.
we don't know what that cost might be, but we won't know until we do an add alternate.
Yeah, so this structure, because it's precast versus the Roberts Commons ones was a post-tension system, we have some additional flexibility. So there, yes, it would have been better to put those in when the concrete went in, because then we can lock in the locations of that versus now having to work around where the post-tension cabling is at. With our ramp, with the precast structure, we have that flexibility of mounting additional superstructure to that kind of anywhere in the ramp, as long as it's structurally supported. From our design team standpoint, the direction they've been given is to expect a normal, I guess, loading for a solar superstructure on top of that, and we're able to work that into the design to make sure the capacity is there to be able to handle that.
Right, so then what you're saying is you don't necessarily need the anchors, you'd be able to just bolt in the anchors? Is that what
Exactly.
you're
Yep.
saying?
We were able to post a drill in this pretty easily because of the type of structure that it is. Yep.
Okay, and so does it still have post-tension or not when it's precast?
There are some structure that's in there, but because of its precast and just the different structural elements to it, we actually almost have complete flexibility where we are able to drill into it or to actually put holes in it and things like that. So,
Right, and then also for, like on the Roberts ramp, you know, we have the EV charging system that the state is helping us match the funds with Xcel Energy, Microsoft, and others. You know, just those conduits, and I think you and I have talked about this before, is to make sure that we're, you know, leaving enough room so that we can be adaptive. Electric cars are coming, you know, and we don't know, but it'll be in the next 50 years. So again, I think that, have you made some arrangements so that could be added to as
Yes.
we go?
Yep, so we have allocated some extra space kind of in our utility metering electrical room areas down there. And then I've also designated, I guess, knockout areas or chases where we are able to get up vertically through the ramp as well and not impact additional parking or structure or something like that. So
Right. And one of the other things that we've discussed is, even with existing ramps and the future ramps, is, you know, think about, again, to make them future ready and start to think about them more as mobility hubs, not just parking garages. So we started that already at Roco with the bike parking underneath. And, you know, when we add the EV charging, that adds another dimension. But as things continue, you know, integrating, you know, where the transit routes are. So you're thinking about all types of mobility and making room for that and kind of planning for that. For one thing, I don't know if we're ever going to have scooters. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. We will have e-bikes at Great Ride. In our next iteration will likely be e-bikes. And the power, you know, availability, where the way the e-bikes work right now is they're docked. So basically you just need a little more power to those docks than what we have right now. It's just a 110 outlet for what we use, and we'll in the future need more than that. But those types of things, again, are things that we want to consider when we're designing these.
yeah, we aren't specifically designing for an e-bike charging station right now, but we do have areas of the building where there's striped no parking zones, or just because it's a dead corner or something like that. We do have plenty of square footage for bike stations. And because of the ease of installation or you know, just general openness of a ramp, running conduit to places like that from our electrical room are fairly easy to do.
Right.
Should we want to do that in the future.
Right, so some of us, we had a Mobilities Matter conference in May, and the MetroCog's got a bike and bed committee that's working on analyzing our current policies for things like, you know, dockless bikes or dockless scooters, things like that. And then I know I've been working with Julie Bommelman about this too, But the idea is, the way dockless bikes and dockless scooters are going in the cities is not working all that well right now, because part of it is there's no coordination about where they charge and where they're set when they're done. So instead of just leaving a dockless bike or scooter in front of a store, if you have these mobility hubs that are within a few blocks of where people are going, then they can actually charge those units. The way it goes now is they have people that they call them chargers, for like in Denver, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, where it's basically like Uber drivers, where the chargers look and see this dockless bike needs a charge, this dockless scooter needs a charge. They go pick it up, they bring it home, and they charge it. That's not very efficient. So if we can identify some hubs basically like this, where all that stuff goes to gets charged, that's really something that can help us when we, working towards our goal of mixed use and adding density, so people have more options than just driving. So part of this is just preaching a little bit, but part of it too is, since we're in the design stages, just to be ready for these types of concepts. And I know you guys are looking at that all the time. Okay. Anything else, Jim?
Yeah, maybe just, we've been working with Baker Tilly to, excuse me, come up with a financial plan. We've also been in contact with Research Park Ventures because I think we're able to get a zero interest loan from them that'll balloon at 10 years, because as you've seen some of these financial models before, the tough times to make those annual payments is that first 5 years until the TIF revenue starts. And so that's well underway. So it's really Baker Tilly. I hope we want to get the proposal from them. Once we get these costs, hopefully next week, we'll have an idea of where we are with the budget to make sure we're still at where we think we need to be. We're in discussions with Kilbourne on what the land price will be going into this. So it's really kind of getting the project costs together, knowing what the land costs will be, lining up the money with Baker Tilly, and then putting that all into a development agreement. I hopefully we'll get the alley vacation to City Commission September 9th, and I'm trying to target September 23rd for the development agreement. So we might want to have some, special meetings or updates on the design. At this point, you see these design development documents. It's actually, I don't know, about 60 pages. I didn't have print that all out, but I think the striping plan best illustrates what we're interested in. You kind of see the layout of this, a little over 370 parking spots. The one change I've talked to Keith about is if you look at the entrance, we'd like a 3-lane entrance so we can have the reversible lane at that main entrance. The parking north of that, that'll be that'll be ungated. And so whether we use a pay station or that's the reserved monthly parking, I think there'll be one of the other things there. This might be better, I think, to have that be some reserved higher cost parking, and then get the hourly people into the main facility. That gives us more flexibility and really opens up more spots for hourly parking and that kind of use. The other sheet that I added is you can kind of see the landscaping plan. Again, with the alley, or with the street being narrowed, we'll have some landscaping along there. The actual, there'll be the concrete that you'll see on the face of the ramp. That's about the only spot where you'll really be able to identify that as a parking ramp. It'll be some sort of textured concrete cover, with a color to it, color to match the building. Like Block 9 has a dark gray and can put some lines in it. This could be some other color more to match the what's decided for the color of the Mercantile building. But really the north and the north, south, and west will be pretty well wrapped and really won't be visible to the public. The stair towers are located on the northwest corner and the southeast corner. They have an elevator in the southeast corner, so most people exiting the ramp will exit at 5th Street and 4th Avenue. And I think this design works fairly well. We have Walker Consultants doing a review on this just to make sure it functions well, that it's as efficient as it can be. So they're under contract to do that, and that work review will be done prior to us going into that development agreement. When we get into this final design that you mentioned, where exactly do the bike racks go and all of that, that will be worked out kind of during construction.
Right, so for the grade of this, we talked about how we could reduce some height by going down like a sub-level, not necessarily a full level, but is the north side the level that goes down a little bit, or where is it?
Yeah, as you look at the lower, in the lower right-hand page, what you see there is that, that north part, you'll enter there, that won't be a gate, and you go down, and then there's sort of a dead end there, so you can turn around, so there'll be a limited number of parking spots there. Depending on how the future townhomes develop, some of those parking stalls might be reserved or even enclosed for some of those residents, where that needs to be worked on once we get this main deal together. So, that'll be pretty valuable parking because you'll be able to just kind of walk out either to the east or the west, and you don't have to go up all those levels. You probably can't read it. The number of parking spots on each level, it's in the upper right-hand corner, but unless you've got a magnifying glass, it's hard to read that. So it'll be very much like, Roco. After you go in, there'll be those 3 lanes with a reversible middle lane. You'll drive up till you find a parking spot and then go back down. We certainly have the option to designate some for short-term parking. Maybe the first row will be short-term parking only, and then try to get the monthly people to go up a little higher. I think something like that might work well.
Randy?
Jim, what is the plan for public use? I mean, how much of this will be public use? When you talk about the future that we have for the townhomes and the mixed-use building, is there a plan? I know that when we got done with Roco, I think it was one of the reports we had, that we ended up with a net gain of, and correct me, 14? And so I think probably that's why Fargo Theater is here, and what would our net gain be with another parking ramp? And I know we have to pay for them, I know we have to keep them busy,
Sure.
but what's the, the public portion of this?
I think on what was used to be the Warner lot, there are 70 or 80 spots, and I suppose, a good year surface, you might get another 20 in now. So the net gain for the area is going to be, 270. So this will be a bigger, gain than some of those other areas. It's sort of our model right now is we're anticipating we want to try to keep about 50 of those available for that hourly parking. Now, as it operates, if we don't need that many, that could be reduced. If we need more, we could do more. So again, that can be kind of adjusted based on the demand. Looking at businesses in the area, I think we're going to probably have, almost 400 monthly parkers into here right away. And so we're assuming probably a 10 to 15% oversell, just because there'll be 100 apartment units, but our experience is that a lot of those are gone during the day. And so, for instance, Roberts Commons, there are 70 apartments there, and we've rented out 30 parking spots to those people. And some of those are gone during the day. And so this mixed use, a lot of the people work somewhere else in town, or they have a parking spot because they work at Gate City Bank or US Bank, and so they don't rent one. So we'll certainly accommodate them, but I think I don't think this is going to solve that long-term parking problem. That's why I think we'll need to continue to look at other partnerships a little bit further south, but I think it'll help meet the need kind of towards this northern end of downtown. Mike's mentioned the fact that the Island Park ramp, we have probably 200 spaces typically open, a lot of days there, and so, at some point, will people decide to use that facility? One thing they should, maybe I'll just kind of jump ahead into that pricing. In order to finance this, we're looking at some substantial increases in the parking rates. Maybe just throw on mercantile, go to that revenue. So I'm looking at is the Roberts Commons right now is at 106. So this new ramp would also be at 106. But the Roberts Commons and the Civic ramp would increase from 106 to 129. So that way, people will kind of move to where they feel the best deal is. And so if you want to pay 129 and be right on Second Avenue, you can do that. Or if you want to walk a block, you can, save $20 a month and go up there. And so in talking with several of the companies in the area, they're willing to move a lot of their people up to Mercantile, which will open up spots at Roco and the Civic. And we do have people on the waiting list there that would be comfortable paying the 129 and even those reserved spots at 150. So that would be but that's going to be a 20% increase. We really need to do that in order to get these bonds financed. That doesn't mean we're always going to be doing 20% increases, but our big need for money is in these first few years, and so we're going to have to take a pretty good jump. But then after that, I think will be more like the cost of inflation. I think just needed to keep it operating.
Is this garage going to be then managed by Interstate as well?
That's our intent. It would be another P3 like Roco, and so our actual agreement is that Roco is still operated by Kilborn Group, who hires Interstate. So if we have Kilborn Group do this, it would be the same arrangement. We have a contract with them to manage the parking. They intend to use Interstate parking.
And what about parking in the evening? Is it the same plan for open parking?
Yes, free nights and weekends after 5.
All right.
So I think part of the agreement with Roberts was for Kilborn to have that operating portion, at least for the first 5 years, because of some financial issues, or criteria, I should say. And then that goes away after 5 years, or can go away after 5 years, and then we would revisit that after 5 years. And that'd be set up kind of the same way at Mercantile, is that right?
That's the plan, yes.
Okay, sounds good.
The other rates, so I mentioned Roberts Commons and the Civic, but also the GTC Garage, we'd be looking at going to 106 and NP Avenue up to about 90. Now, I'd like to suggest that we keep the Island Park ramp at 59, so that then people have that option. If you want a lower cost option to park downtown, that's a little bit further away to walk, then there'll be that $59 option. As far as the feasibility of a shuttle bus there, that's something we could look at in the future. Right now, there might not be the demand for it, but when you think of the Roco at 129 and the Civic at 59, some people would prefer to save that $70 a month and walk that little extra distance. So we'll use pricing to try to utilize all the facilities.
Right, so right now at Roco, Vanessa, it's $3 an hour, and then what is it, $8 a day max for the transient parking? What do we charge there?
Max is $8.
Right, and then it's $3 an hour after the first 2 hours free, is that right? If you're there
First 2 hours are free, 2 to
Right.
4 are $3.
Yeah.
And then it goes up to 6, and then you're
Right.
8.
And that's really worked well, but I'm wondering if we, again, I think we can use that Island Park ramp. I was just up there today, I took a panoramic. There's nobody on the first or top floor and a half, and then the rest of it, of course, as you're lower. And I know we lost a lot of Sanford parking there, but it's a real opportunity, especially with Main Avenue. But maybe we could even reduce the hourly rates for that place, along with, leaving the rental rates low. But part of this whole idea that some of the business guys came up with is actually advertising the Island Park ramp about, how it's so much cheaper with some table tents, and maybe have the DCP distribute some of this to help people say, looking for parking? Here it is, and it's cheap. So, Jim, what do you think of that idea about helping, putting out some advertising now? Because I don't think Maine's gonna get, that's gonna go on next year too.
I think that's a good idea, maybe to have an even lower hourly rate. With the $59 a month, people are only paying about $3 a day to park there. So maybe our maximum there should be a $3 maybe it's only $2 after 2 hours and $3 all day parking, and I think maybe I can visit with Vanessa and Paul, and if you're comfortable, we could even have a lower hourly rate there and promote it.
Right. And again, you know, the 2-hour free at Roco was an introductory rate, and we're going to continue it until it shows that there's a reason to change it, I think. I mean, it's worked more than any of us expected, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I use the example, that if you look in our financial report, at the Civic, we don't provide any first hour free, and our hourly parking there is in the $6,000 a month range, and at Roco, we give the first 2 hours away free, and we have $16,000, so it's not what you would expect, but it's really helped. I mean, it's, I guess, maybe a better location, but just a half block off of Broadway versus a block, and the fact that it's publicized a lot helps. But I think, trying to, I'd be reluctant to try to change it when it's working this well.
Yeah, but Island Park is wide open.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There possibly be some use for that too, I think, when they're at redevelopment or further development along NP Avenue, you know, and displacing a lot of the cars, you know, the ramp, or the surface lots will be developed at some point. So that's going to become necessary to utilize that,
I think
probably within a year or so.
You know, there's some interest, and I think we should, you know, look hard at it, is selling the Main Avenue lot for development if the right proposal comes along, because, you know, first of all, it's not, you know, utilized that well. It's, and it's right across the street from a parking ramp that we already have. And so I think using that for development that would then, you know, have their employees park across the street near the park ramp makes a lot of sense. And there is an interest in that. I think as Main Avenue gets completed, there'll be even more of an interest in that facility. So that's one of the things that's been kind of working on behind the scenes is, you know, just selling that lot for the right price. And I think we can get some revenue from it, as well as get some customers across the street.
So, any further discussion on the parking rates for 2020?
None.
No. So one of the things you'd mentioned earlier, Randy, is, you know, to charge what we need to charge to cover the debt service on the
I've always
structured
said that,
parking,
you know.
and leave
Yeah, and I think we do that, and I think we have a formula really for maximizing the revenues, you know, after we've done Roco. And I think that, you know, we'll see that after Mercantile's done as well, and it'll give us a lot of information with those two garages as we move forward as well.
Welcome, Commissioner Pepcorn.
So I guess in August, we'll probably bring back a package, and we may need a special meeting, but to really look at, okay, what's the agreement going to be for Mercantile? How much is it going to cost? And what are the parking rates need to be to do that? And so that'll be one package that'll come together for you in August.
Right. Again, I think it's important to have these meetings more regularly. We missed June again, and I think we lose some momentum when that happens, so we can talk about that in other business. Anything else on the parking rates, or are we good with that? The next item would be the Fargo Theater sent us a letter, and it's been a long-term issue for you guys. Margie Bailey's also on our parking commission, so we're well aware that daytime parking for the shows has always been a challenge. And maybe you can come up and introduce yourselves and let us know what you got in mind.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Beck. I'm the executive director of the Fargo Theater. And as you said, Mike, parking has been a challenge for us for some time. But in the last 1.5 to 2 years, we really feel like it's getting to a critical point. So my board and I reached out with a letter. And honestly, I'm here today to ask for help. We came up with an idea, but we are absolutely open to hearing other ideas. Right now, unlike most of our neighboring businesses, the Fargo Theater is really limited in our ability to offer weekday, daytime programming because the average film that's produced today runs 101 minutes and parking is 90 minutes. So we're certainly not able to say to a customer when they're buying a ticket, well, just leave the movie halfway through and go and move your car. Yes, some of our customers absolutely do utilize the ROCO ramp, but when we're looking at high volume, the example I think I put in the letter was that we recently had a showing of Dumbo that had over 500 people attend, which was great. We were very excited about that, but then we were immediately inundated with complaints, and the next week we saw attendance plummet for the kids series.
So were the complaints about not enough available parking in the proximity, or were they about getting a parking ticket, or both?
I don't think we got any after the fact about parking tickets on that particular day, but we do get them often.
And, okay, so they are using ROCO to some degree, right?
To some extent, of course, there are folks that are not comfortable.
Familiar.
Some of our senior citizen clientele tell us they just don't feel safe using our parking ramp. We try to push back against that. And then there is, I don't really agree with this, but there is the perception that it's too far away from the Fargo Theater, particularly when it's cold. We've heard that
Yeah.
multiple times.
Do you have something, Dave?
Do you mind if I jump in? And obviously, the Fargo Theater, it's iconic for our city, and, you know, it's what most people identify with when they take a picture. So, but the challenge is, it's right on Broadway, and our concept is Broadway is for customers, for retail, you know, and so we want to have short-term parking on Broadway, and I do, you know, we're changing perceptions, you know, like, to me, the parking ramp, it's literally, if you cut through the alley, it's 200 yards at the most. And so part of it is, it just takes time. You know, a lot of your customers, for senior citizens, they're just used to being able to park right in the front and walk into the Fargo Theater. Well, those days are over.
Right.
And so, and I do think we have to make sure, I do think one of the other challenges was that the street behind there, Robert Street, I think you know, that's been under construction now, and so once that gets done, that'll help a little bit. But I mean, Broadway, that's short-term parking, and so is that what you're thinking? And can you understand our conundrum or whatever?
Absolutely, and that's why the suggestion that my board and I made was the request to move it from 90 minutes to 2 hours. Hopefully, that would still provide plenty of turnover for our neighboring retailers and restaurants.
But see,
I would leave that to your expertise, but it would literally be a game changer. We would be able to offer daytime programming.
So, and part of this is, you know, we don't have parking meters, so the only way that we can control turnover is through the minutes, and actually interstate parking in our parking management system with the graduated rate has been making some improvements, and we do understand your plight. But again, you know, every spot on Broadway generates $350 a day in retail. And that's a lot, but you need it to turn over. You can't have employees parking there. You need customers parking there. Your moviegoers are customers, we understand that.
Absolutely.
But part of this is, again, I'd appreciate you guys coming here, because we're not saying no, we're asking, you know, maybe there's some ways we can work together. Before you got here, Commissioner, I'd mentioned with RDO owns that ramp on 4th Avenue, which is even closer to yours. So maybe, you know, I asked Keith to introduce you to the management for that parking ramp. The city doesn't own or operate that, but they, you know, are good partners with us. And there is some agreements for some public parking there now after 6. But I think our best chance, there's 2 things coming. Mercantile is gonna get started this year. So we're gonna have to get used to parking in ramps to some degree.
I agree.
Yep. So it's, any ideas you have, we want to hear, but Nicole's got some too, so come on up.
Okay.
Can I add one more before
Yes,
you?
absolutely.
And I apologize for.
No, go ahead.
But the mercantile, I believe that will be a big difference, because it's the mental thing of, if you can see where you're going to, do you know, and that will literally be kitty corner from the Fargo Theater. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I do think that will have a positive, because really that, you can see it from there. It's like the Fargo Dome, if you can see, and you're really a long ways away, but at least you can see what you're walking to.
West
All right.
Acres, same way.
Right.
Nicole?
Let me just,
Oh, I'm
before
sorry.
Nicole starts, I just, a question, you say you have 500 people that would come to the movie, and so with that, then maybe, 200 cars? Are you talking? And then, one of the problems is, and I can see what you're all saying, is what, Broadway, there's only 20, 30 cars that would be close enough to the front door to satisfy these people who want to be able to see. So I don't think it would actually correct part of the problem when you have that many people there. And I think, maybe there should be a discussion of some sort of shuttle back and forth or some way to introduce seniors to going into the ramp and saying, hey, we're going to pick you up, we're going to take you there. And that way, when you have 200 or 300 cars, it seems like it's much more friendly and it's warm in the wintertime. So, it's just in my mind looking at it, I think to myself, well, it doesn't help me that much. It's only 30 cars. Because somebody else is going to park in front of a retailer. You're not going to, for 2 hours, you're not going to get all of those just for the Fargo Theater. So I'm not certain that would change anything, but maybe some sort of valet or moving people somehow, some way to one of these new garages.
Nicole?
Yeah, so I know it's unique for me to stand up here. Usually with the new room set up and not in the table where I can raise my hand, it's kind of hard to holler. But yeah, a couple things. We probably should have rearranged the agenda on the Parking Commission because the next item on the downtown survey will help discuss some of these items. And we have a laydown item with a cover memo. So I was just going to say there's some thoughts there. I think one of the big differences too is that 300 Broadway is no longer a cut through and after certain hours. And so I think myself included from personal experience, when you park on Roberts, you're walking all the way around the block. And so again, not a big deal for most people if you could expect that. But I'll chime in further when we get to the next item, but I think some of that relates to what the Fargo Theater is speaking to.
Right. And you used to be on their board, are you still?
Oh, I'm not on their board anymore. No, it's been about 6 years or so since I've been on.
Yep.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of, and what I would just say, and maybe going into the next item for sake of time, since it's already 10 till, is I think there's a lot of behavioral changes happening in downtown and on Broadway, and I would just delicately challenge some of our older thinking when it comes to the specialness of Broadway. And I have some proposals in the next memo on how to do that. So, yeah.
Commissioner, anything? Okay. Emily, so we want to work with you. One of the things is about advertising, so would you be willing to kind of share information when we come up with some advertising as far as posters, maybe just ways that maybe on your website?
Absolutely.
We can, work with Interstate Parking and the Downtown Business Association and businesses like yours about just sharing some of this information about how to do it and what to expect.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And just to clarify, with the new mercantile lot, that'll be about 50 daytime spaces that our customers.
But actually,
utilize?
that's really, it's hard to pin down because as Vanessa, maybe that's something that we track, but on average, there's way more than 50 people that are using, public people that are using. It does change, and like Jim said, the uses change, so it's a 24/7. These are 24/7 lots, so some people, you don't get to rent it and just park your car there 24 hours a day. Those people get to park it for a shift, and then those open up. So there are some reserved spots, but as far, even during the street fair, there was available public parking at the Roberts ramp. To me, that's a good indication that there's available public parking. So I don't know, Vanessa, do we know that number? I mean, do we track that? We track the revenue, but do we, track the number of transient users on a daily basis?
We do.
Yeah.
I don't have that
Right.
number
Yeah,
available.
but maybe we can just talk about that the next time. So, and that's part of the information we can maybe share, because it, like Jim said, the perception is 50 doesn't sound like much, but in the operations of a multi-use 24/7 facility, we're finding that there's capacity for public parking.
But we see also that it kind of varies by season. So in the summer, when a lot of people are on vacation, there could be 100 spots available. The other thing I'd just ask you to take a look at, if you look at our website, fargoparking.com, there's a little video on how you use the Roberts ramp. Maybe you'd want to show that as a trailer at your theater. We could make that available. just so people know that it's there and how it works.
We
So just to
do
be
want to
clear,
work with you, and, you know, for me, I keep thinking that there's going to be a lot of little fixes in order to be able to supply 200 parking places in downtown Fargo during a given day for the theater. So I think we can take a look at a lot of fixes, but I do believe that maybe that a lot of the older adults that go there, perhaps they don't realize that it's free parking for the first 2 hours. And, you know, maybe getting the word out on some of that will help eliminate some of your problem. And if we can figure out a way to move people when you're having your bigger shows, we'll certainly work with you on that and try to figure out a way to accomplish what you need to have accomplished.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks for reaching out and working with us on this. So the next item on the agenda is to talk about the downtown survey. Nicole? Well, actually, Island Park ramp signage promotions, let's move that down and let's move you up because you're running out of time. So.
Yeah, and Melissa couldn't be here today with the DCP, but we did have a chance to coordinate with her on this, and Ben Dow's here with Public Works. But maybe just a quick update. And I think one thing at the staff level, both with the DCP and internally, we've been pretty focused on the parking ramps like Roco and Mercantile, et cetera. But we probably need to spend some more time talking about the on-street management system. You know, some of the things that have been, it's a given for as long as I've been here, might be ripe for future discussion. And so the survey is attached, and maybe just three summary points. There seems to be a majority desire to remove Saturday enforcement. There is support of the overnight restrictions, including keeping Broadway clear of cars. And we all know this, but there's also concerns about construction vehicles on Broadway specifically. And so that was probably the three takeaways from staff's interpretation of the survey. The survey is attached, the results, and we'll post that up on our website as well, and share that. I know DCP is sharing that with their board members in the bid as well. So maybe just to break these categories down, we see two groups of categories. One, things that we can do quickly, and things that need some more dialogue. And the things that we could probably do quickly, and in fact is already in operation, Public Works, Ben Dow has been working with administration to do an RFP for overnight towing and enforcement. And once we understand the costs and potential interest by the contractors, we will be able to further coordinate that with the administration office and the finance department for funding strategies. Just as a side note, the planning department did put that in our request for the budget. It did not get funded based on the presentation we heard on Tuesday's meeting this week. However, we have yet to have those interactive meetings with the mayor's office to find out. A lot of times when something isn't funded, there's another strategy. It's not because they're saying, no, don't do it. So we just need to have more dialogue on that. And then Kevin Gorder and Christy Schmidt with the engineering department is in the process. It's going through the PUPEC, Public Works Project Evaluation Committee, where they're taking forward some better right-of-way management practices for policing, like the roll-off storages and the dumpsters in Broadway. So for instance, we received a request for a building improvement project where they wanted a stage out on Broadway, and just a couple weeks ago, engineering denied it because we just knew that was really bad timing. That's probably the first time in history where we've denied something based on that. So we are making progress, and working with our city attorney's office and Nancy Morris, getting better lease agreement language so we have that enforcement capability. That's what happened this last spring, is they violated the permit, but we had no enforcement practice. And so, the practice was there, is just we had no penalty for when they said, never mind, city, we don't want to listen to you, And so we're getting better language, so we have the policing powers that goes with that. Lastly, I'd like to propose this. This is probably controversial and somewhat, I'll just say controversial, but as we look at the number of complaints I've been listening to for 12 years, I know you've been listening to them longer, and as well as with the changing dynamic of the Broadway redesign, as the curb bumps out and as the flavor of the urban design changes downtown and the intensiveness, I would like to propose maybe removing Saturday enforcement. The bang for the buck for what we're getting in terms of negative feedback on that might not be worth that balance. Maybe looking at a universal 3-hour parking limit across, minus the drop-off zones, remove the 90-minute, the 2-hour, and the 4 hours in that idea of clarity, and then restricting contractor and service vehicles for parking on Broadway. All three of these are very controversial in nature, and so I'm just throwing it out there. And what I'd like to propose is a data-driven discussion and a data-driven design process where, if you remember when Joe Nigg was here, we would do these quarterly outreach meetings with, Andy and Joe in tow with the DCP and Mike Hahn, and we would have open houses and dialogue and very fluid, I would say, feedback loops as we explore opportunities. Now with Mercantile, Block 9, and ROCO, it's a different today. And how do we talk about those discussions with our partners and determine what might be the best long-term solution? So for instance, as an example, anybody local, I'm just betting, I'm not sure, I'm kind of a betting person. And so I'm just betting that nobody local is intentionally driving down Broadway unless you absolutely have to, right? Like if I'm going somewhere, I'm not driving down Broadway, I'm driving down Roberts, I'm driving down 4th, I'm 5th, and then with the construction, of course, all bars, there's no path for it, right? And so it's really about understanding how do we market those communication links, and not to say don't drive down Broadway, of course, but how do we make that open and inviting for people visiting Fargo for the first time, and things like that. And so this is all part of a bigger dialogue. I don't have answers. I just want to do some deeper dives on the survey to see and have some discussion and dialogue, and just throw stuff on the wall and see where we result.
Yeah, I think that's really a good idea. More regular meetings about parking, but again, transit, as you know, mobility is a very important piece of this because, our goal is to have 12, 15,000 people downtown, and if everybody's driving, we're not going to have room on the roads, much less room for parking. So transit and mobility, micro-mobility, all makes a difference. So I think that's really good for us to have a focus on a regular, ongoing basis to build on the work done in Go 2030 and the downtown plan. One of the things is best practices, so we brought in Dennis Burns in the past and other experts that have had experience in other cities, how they've done this, and sometimes we just tweak it a little bit to make it fit our context. Yep. So I think that the sooner that happens, the better as far as...
Yeah, so maybe one thing to just summarize, I had a presentation to the City Commission 2 weeks ago, and a couple things that the planning department universally is trying to adopt is, and a couple things that, but one of them is a capital improvement plan type of thing, a work program that is actually going in front of the City Commission, adopted, and then I have metrics that I have to meet as part of that. And so what I'd like to propose is getting this project developed so that it ends up on our January 2020 kickoff, so I can get the appropriate staff supporting this and/or consultants, and then do the dialogue process, and then if there's any changes to be had, have a really detailed communication and marketing strategy as part of that. A lot of coordination with engineering to understand what their timelines are like for the next coming year, and then having the changes that we could roll out maybe by summer 2020 if there's changes to be had.
Yeah, again, some of these are quick hitters that don't have to wait till next year to be implemented, I think, as far as considerations for signage, things like that. We've done that. Jeremy basically can do it in a short order, but part of it is about the importance of the communication. and I really, when you talk about the capital improvements projections, I think one of the things, and maybe you have added some more tools since I've been here, but as far as measuring opportunity costs, so why should the city invest
Yeah, I have a
more
metric
public
that I
funds?
introduced to the city commission on the decision-making process and how projects prioritize and meter, yeah.
So can I ask Nicole, so the 3-hour parking just changed, so then that would be uniform across the downtown? So on Broadway, to me, if I was a retailer and I had a car parked there for 3 hours, when we talk about the value of each of those parking spots, I don't, but, and I'm sure you have reasons behind that, but I guess, and maybe I'm just conditioned, I mean, I always thought that we wanted those to me, that's a unique street compared to the other streets, and I kind of like the concept of the further you got away from the heavy trafficked area, the longer you could park. But maybe, can you just talk about that? I'm sure you have reasons, so I'm just.
Yeah, so I have a couple of reasons, but at the same time, I wholeheartedly agree, you know, and so what our job is to do in the planning department is just delicately take this, is to challenge what we think is true, right? And so what we think is true is that. I believe it too, right? And so it's like, what happens if we think about a different future and a different purpose? What would happen, right? And so we don't have to actually do it. We just have to talk about it and think about it and how it would impact the system. And so maybe that temporary parking, absolutely, you know, because that is a big complaint in the survey, is how do we get that temporary people that want to go to the bank quickly, drop off a deposit, et cetera, right? And so how do you get that to happen quickly? Maybe there's a different part of the city that's easier to get to, like on Roberts or on Fifth Street, that is the temporary 15-minute zone. And so it's, again, just thinking about the whole system. And that's what yes, Jeremy can change signs quickly, but my concern is we've been tinkering around with changes for the last 12 years since I've been here and not thinking about the whole system. Yep. And we need to think about the whole system because one affects the other, and then the whole system breaks down. And we're getting very close to a whole universal system. And I really want us to look back at the Downtown in Focus plan and look at that as a guiding document to pick up the deeper dive with.
Right. So again, part of it is an easy opportunity cost measurement is for every less car a person has in their family, they save $9,000. So it opens up the affordability for housing because housing does cost more downtown, but it's not $9,000 a year more. So again, to make those types of opportunity cost measurements is important for
Absolutely.
driving these decisions. So this is not something new that we've been trying to strive to. It's just something we've been building on and we're making some progress. Yeah. And so parking has made a lot of improvements, the graduated rate, the additional structures, the 2-hour free, been very innovative. So when I talk to parking experts that have meters, they ask, how do you do it? I mean, so it's not like we haven't made progress, but we have a lot more work to do. Jim?
I think that discussion with the DCP is important. You know, some of the comments about we shouldn't allow people with construction permits to park on Broadway, and the truth is we don't. If they do park there, they're subject to the time limits and they get tickets. But if people, you know, think that they can, you know, be there, then it's more a matter of education. The other is, you know, the Saturday enforcement. Maybe that's different than it was when we started this. We used to see a lot of residents downtown just parking on Broadway, you know, just leaving their cars there all day. And that was one of the reasons for it. And, you know, I'll put Vanessa on the spot. You know, our signs say you can't park on Saturday. I don't think we actually do any enforcement. It's more it's pretty sporadic just to try to get people off. Yeah. So I think very few people would ever get a ticket on Saturday. Vanessa, do we actually do any enforcement Saturday?
We do not.
Right. So before interstate parking, we used to try to do 2 hours in the morning from like 8 o'clock to 10 just to get the people that were leaving it there all weekend long. So that's the history of it. But in practicality, like I said, we have an ordinance and a rule that we're not enforcing in a lot of
And so I think that's exactly what we want to talk about. And Commissioner Pepcorn, the goal, and again, the 3 hours just to test. The part of it is one of the number one complaints I get is how confusing our system is. And so how do we simplify our system so it's really understandable to the visitor and the person that comes to downtown once or twice a year? The routine people, we know the system, but how do we make it welcoming to all and remove as many barriers as possible to make that visiting experience as good as possible? Is really our at least our goal in the Downtown Community Partnership and in the city of Fargo at this point in time.
Right, and a lot of that can be as part of communication, so the awareness for the visitors, so it's EVB, DCP, and with the current existing structures we have. Like I said, on Street Fair, we had open spot. I was surprised. I said, I'm gonna get up to the top, I'm gonna have to turn around. No, nobody had to do that. So there is availability there, and there is at Island Park. So I'm really excited, thank you for doing this, and building on a lot of good plans that have been in place and working on for years. One item I did have, though, is on the enforcement. So Ben, maybe I can ask you a question. So I know that Street does a lot of parking ticketing, and, you know, it's really kind of almost based on need more, isn't it, Ben?
That's correct. I mean, it's having the ability to get in and do the job we need to do as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So what we're looking at doing is not, you know, it's focusing not so much on the towing, but the consistent enforcement is what we're going to go out with this RFP and try and get a contractor on board. So we're doing it 24/7, 365 throughout the whole year, so that we can get the people, you know, trained and educated on what our enforcement strategies are.
So what do you think about the downtown area? Because it is a different, I know you need uniform enforcement all over, but again, we have an opportunity, I think, maybe with interstate parking to do a couple hours, you know, a night without a huge impact. To me, maybe we could include that in you know, maybe think about, okay, for the downtown area, maybe we could see what would happen if we just made an amendment to interstate parking's contract to do those 2 hours a day? And then that's really another discussion about the whole city too, because you also need an RFP.
Right, and this RFP is strictly for the downtown business
Oh, it is?
district.
Okay, so
Yes,
what do you
that's
think
all
of
we're
that?
focusing on
Yeah.
right now, getting that started
Yeah.
and rolled out, because that is where we need to be
Right.
most efficient, is so that when we need to get in there and clear snow, we've made significant changes on our operations sides, but like in this last winter, when conditions were extreme, we ran into trouble. And so we need to get in and out of the downtown in 2 nights, and that's what we want to do. And that's the only way we can do that is consistent enforcement, and then when we do come down to clean snow, we impound vehicles.
Right, and the survey showed that that has support. So I guess my point or my question is, we've made contract amendments with interstate parking before to do.
And Commissioner, I have talked to Paul about that, and so he's chosen to wait until we do a contract renewal at the end of the year.
I see. So is the RFP premature? So I guess part of this is it's budget time. So it would really be nice if we could have 50,000 or so set aside for that when it happens, because maybe an RFP is a little early if we've got somebody that's
Well, I think what
in-house.
we have to do is we have to do some comparative pricing.
Yeah.
That's key. I mean,
Yeah.
we need to get out there in front of it and see what this is gonna cost. We also need to get out of it, in front of it before this next winter.
Yeah. No, I
That's the one
agree.
thing, is we're just kicking this can down the road
Right.
year after year after year, and we need to get moving on this.
Well, I agree with you, but part of it is, again, building on work that we already have. So one of the advantages of interstate parking is it isn't just on-street. Your concern is the on-street parking, and I understand it. Part of what we're thinking about is the additional safety and eyes and management of those parking structures. So again, having the management company that's actually doing that work now to add that dimension in the overnight, to me, adds a lot of value. Instead, I can see another contractor coming in. We've used different contractors to do nighttime enforcement, but then you don't have that cohesiveness and that context between how it's running as a system, daytime and nighttime, and on-street and off-street. So to me, there's a huge advantage in trying to work with a single vendor in all of those cases. And I don't think it would slow down the process.
No, and I agree with you, and that, we'll open that up to the public, and if Interstate chooses to put a submittal in, they would definitely get some preferential points because of that, because they've got a history and stuff like that. But, you know, that's something they haven't been wanting to do up to this point, to start before the end of the year. So it might play in that they would take it on without a contract amendment right now, and then we build it into the contract when we do the new contract.
Yeah, I guess, again, to me, it's about consistency, and they've proven that they've done a good job, and we've got a budget request, and maybe we just need to move up the contract agreement and
Well, and I think
that
the
way.
important key here is maybe just as a, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand this is Ben has his operations, he's working with administration, he's working with the finance department, he has his system.
Yes.
This is really outside the parking commission. It's, we did the survey, the data to confirm it agrees. When Ben makes his decision and the finance and the city commission make their decision, we'll take that information and
Yeah.
collaborate and work with the communication component and the marketing component and ensure that consistency.
Actually, that to me, I don't know, I've been on it since 2004. The parking commission's role is on-street and off-street parking management in the downtown and working with all the agencies, the transit, the street department. And I don't think it's a PUPEC decision. I think it's we're a recommending body. We have experts that work downtown, live downtown, have got good experience. And I just want to make sure that we're part of that decision-making process. And Dave?
So, Mr. Chairman, so the Parking Commission is an advisory
That's right.
commission to the City Commission. And so, and I do think that that's their thing. The Parking Commission isn't supposed to be getting into all the other I mean, this is it, parking,
Right.
not getting into engineering. I agree, it leads that way, but the main responsibility is the parking on-street and off-street.
Right, and budget is part of that. So how you.
But the Parking Commission is not in charge of the budget.
No, but we make budget requests like any other commission.
And I think we've taken that request forward.
Well, I
To
haven't
the City
even,
Commission, it's a
Yes.
recommending body to the City Commission, and
Right.
so, but it isn't the Parking Commission's job to make budgets and things like that. It's,
I agree. So what I'm saying is, we haven't made a formal budget recommendation at this body. And before we can do that, we're getting the street department making a request for funding for management of parking.
Mr. Chair, we do have to collaborate, I do agree with that, but the Parking Commission is just for parking, it's not for engineering.
Right, no, but I'm not, this isn't engineering, it's all the departments. All I'm saying is, to do the parking management, requesting dollars for improvements is part of what we've done and part of what we're trying to do now. So it's not like we're trying to step on anybody's toes. It's just that we want to be able to do our job, and part of our job is making recommendations for if we need additional funds or a contract amendment for our interstate parking management system. That's our role. I don't think that we're stepping on people's toes. I don't mean.
And I'm not trying to step on the Parking Commission's toes or anything, I'm just looking to enforce the ordinance that's in place right now. That's all I'm trying to do.
That's right.
And
And
my
we-
fact was to just do an RFP for a one-year contract. At that point, maybe interstate and the contract can be made so it goes into effect.
Right.
But it's gonna be August here already.
Right.
And I need this in place before September or October.
Right, and the Parking Commission has been trying to do this for 6 months. And so, again, part of this is maybe we can just do it through a contract amendment, or let's start contract early because of the reasons that I spoke of earlier. Having someone familiar with the system on and off street, that's all I'm saying, it's a recommendation, that's all it is.
No, and I would prefer that interstate parking actually do it, it's just we haven't had any response to requests
So
for them to
maybe-
do it.
Could we, maybe if you could do me a favor, or think about it anyway, is just formally ask, would interstate parking like to move up the contract agreements?
That's not a problem at all. Before
And
we
I have asked, I have asked him to do
Yeah,
that.
and if we can get that, I think we
Yeah,
would
absolutely.
solve a lot of this issue.
Before it goes out, anything, I was gonna present the RFP
That
before
would
the
be
planning
one,
commission, send it out to you folks and let you take a look at it.
Right.
And then we'll definitely reach out to Interstate before and include
Yes.
you guys in the conversation to see if we can't make that happen.
And we don't even need to be in conversation, I guess my point is, just ask an interstate if they want to enter into the
Absolutely.
agreements early, before the RFPs. That's all I'm saying.
Not a problem.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on it.
And again, just to
Ben,
clarify, I
yeah.
did ask Paul this, so
right.
we did have dialogue.
And
on
again,
this.
we don't know that at the city commission, other than, at the Fargo Parking Commission, and I know I've talked to him personally, and he says, yes, we do that. well, we'll see.
Okay,
So,
absolutely, not a problem,
sorry about this,
no
sorry.
problem. Any other questions, concerns?
I just want to, we've worked together a long time, common goals, and now we're backed up with a survey. So again, building on a lot of good work, we're just about there.
Yeah.
But I think too, you know, a lot of what we did in the past, I've been on here for 6 or 8 years, was to take care of some of the parking problems that we have. That's why we went to 4-hour parking, you know. So if it's time to look at that again, because of the parking ramps and the construction on these properties, we went to 4 hours in the perimeter areas. We've changed things to move the cars on Broadway for the retailers. You know, the cars weren't sitting there all day. So I'd love, Nicole, to be a part of any discussion you want to have on a weekly basis. I would show up and discuss these kinds of things with you, because I think it's really, really important for the future of parking in downtown Fargo. So you can call me anytime, and if you, I mean, honestly, if you have a discussion group that gets together, I'd like to be involved in it.
Will do. Well, thanks for the feedback, and we will, yeah, and I apologize for any miscommunication, but yeah, I think we're all heading towards the same future. And absolutely, there's a lot of moving parts. You know, we have 15 staff members, so I have 5 people working on parking, not just one. And we have a lot of different moving parts in downtown. And so, but thank you very much for that, Randy, and we'll definitely put a schedule to this. And technically, you don't have a quorum to adopt this today,
Right.
but we'll go ahead and proceed forward with a work plan amendment.
Excellent. So, thanks, everybody. The next item was to Island Park ramp signage and promotions. And so, part of it is people think that it's all hourly or monthly rental, and they're working right next door. So, Jim?
Yeah, and they think that they're right, because that's all we rent out right now. And I think that's when we get these hourly machines in there. We had talked earlier in the meeting about the rates being the same as Roco, but I think Randy had some good points there that, you know, the demand is a lot less. And so, you know, would you be comfortable with more of a 0 to 2 hour free, and then 2 to 4, like $2 and then $3 maximum all day? Do you think that would be a way to try to get more use out of it? Just, I know we can't take any action today, but I can certainly give some direction to Interstate Parking to start with those rates until we want to do something different.
So I'm not sure if you were your commissioner, but the idea, you know, so we've made way more money with the 2 hours free at Roco. So using that formula, but actually instead of $8 a day, Roco for, you know, or $3 an hour, maybe cut it in half, maybe $1.50 or maybe $1, you know, and then $3 for the whole day.
No, and I think that's a great idea, especially for the short term, and try it. And the other thing is, with the challenges with Main Avenue being reconstructed,
Right.
this is a good time to try that, and especially, this would be a good time to, I think we talked about this before, but just the whole, to give those people, especially close by the construction, a place to park
That's
when there's no place semi-close. So I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
We'll
Anything,
start with those rates, and then we can kind of see how it works. If people use it, we'll
and
test
maybe,
from there.
do we have somebody that's artistic that can maybe put together a little preliminary? We won't put it out yet, but we'll start working on it so we can put it out. Because like right now, you know, some of the businesses, DC, they'd be willing to share some of that.
And maybe Nicole can work with our communications
Yeah.
group and something.
And some of those businesses were interested in doing some kind of a promotion.
Okay.
And so I think that's, if we can do something, I think that'd be a great, because it's going to be a challenge next summer as well with some of those businesses. And so I think that'd be a great
Right.
PR opportunity.
Yeah, again, I just, yes, we can do that. I just question the holistic perspective, and communicating. Customers are very confused about what we do and where we do it. And so a method where we can communicate, I mean, we're in daily meetings and discussions with Melissa, and it's hard to keep track of where the ball is. And so I just caution that. But yes,
Yeah.
we can do anything. We just can't do everything, as Mike Frudlinger would say.
Again, but then there are quick hitters, and one of them, if the Island Park ramp is running at 40% and nobody's on the top 3 floors, maybe we can do something about it sooner rather than later.
And the main thing is, I mean, those retailers are having an impact. In the next 2 years, we know that's going to happen. And so this is kind of a good time to at least try to do something to help promote a little more use of that. And then down the road, we can change it. And I know we
Yeah,
don't want to.
absolutely. And what I would just add to that is, do we know this is the solution? And can we do an inventory and interview with the tenants and the business owners on Main Avenue there?
Yeah, I've never heard anybody that complains about the price going down, so I don't know that it's a real controversial issue. But it's good to get feedback, and we have got some feedback, so I think that's good. It's been a good meeting, you guys. Anybody have anything else? Oh, we did want to talk about something about the membership for having a quorum here. We have some members that haven't been showing up regularly, and Randy thought maybe we need to have some criteria for who's going to be involved. I mean, it's a commitment. So we're a recommending body, we volunteer. It's not fair to not have people show up when they're on the committee. So what can we do about that?
A couple things. One, an advertisement's going to be going forward. We do have an opening on the parking commission, and so ad will be coming out shortly. We're going to advertise a 2-week opening there. Margie is not being reappointed and so we will be seeking an opening. When there's that vacancy, that recognized vacancy, your quorum, let's see, would go down until we get that replacement. So, because, yeah, you'll have 4, it'd still take 3, so that math doesn't work. But yeah, I think we just need to seek out, what the constraint is. If it's time, I don't know if it's the TEDx conflict, if, a lot of times we cancel meetings in July. Most of our boards weren't able to achieve quorum in July this month. Yeah.
So one of the things is to maybe consider having the liaison commissioner be an alternate that can vote. And it seems like that'd be maybe a pretty simple addition to our policies.
Yeah, so we have no bylaws, and so we've been trying to seek your support to get bylaws for quite a while. And so we would like to get some bylaws so we can put those in action.
Right. And we don't, it's kind of like we don't always have to do everything all together. I think we can do things incrementally. So if there's a void, maybe we can fill it sooner than having to figure out all the bylaws if we're seeing a void. Might be something we can address at the next meeting and then make a recommendation to the commission.
We'd like to vote you in, Dave.
All right. Yeah. Well, anything else for the good of the order? So if we can't even make a move to adjourn,
Yeah,
I guess
can't.
we're stuck.
We have to stay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.